So, here's the subject matter for today's video. It's just a cheap medical model that I got off of eBay years ago, and I've used it in a bunch of projects as reference. Today I'm going to show you how to use one of those reference images in Illustrator to create a cool geometric line art, kind of monoline style illustration. If a skull is not your flavor, follow along with the video anyway, look at some of the tips and tricks that I share with you, and then apply the same technique to a different subject matter, something like a butterfly or a bird, something that works well in a symmetrical sort of design. So, like I said, follow along, see what you think, and let's go jump into it. Okay, in Illustrator here, the first step is to get our template image set up. So we can go File, Place, navigate to your project folder where you keep your reference image, select it, and place it. Like so. We can come into our position boxes up here and center it up. I was working on a 30 by 30 inch canvas, so 15 and 15 puts it right in the middle. Now, this is where making this a template image begins. If you double click on this layer in your layer palette and check off the template box and hit OK, this image is now a template image, meaning you can create a series of new layers on top, work on them, and when you switch from outline to preview mode and back and forth, the template image will stay partially visible like this, and it will not become just the bounding box of an image, which would happen if it wasn't a template. I can show you that if I turn the template off and then I switch into outline mode. You can see that all you see is the bounding box of the image. You don't see the actual content. So that would not be useful for working on top of as a template. So let's undo that, make it a template again, and put a new layer on top. And now this is where we're going to work. Because our subject matter, in this case, the skull, is symmetrical, I would recommend creating a guide. So if you hit Command R to pull up your rulers, and if you click on one of your rulers and drag out a guide that sits in the middle, you can now build everything on one side, either the left or the right, based on your preference. And at the end, you can grab everything, reflect it across the guide, and it saves you from having to do twice the work. So let's get started here. Let's zoom in, and using the pen tool, we're going to create our first shape. We're going to start from the guide. We're going to click. I'm going to hold Shift to constrain my path so that it stays on this 90-degree plane. And then I'm going to hit Shift again when I'm drawing my next shape to constrain it to a 45-degree angle. I'm going to create a lot of paths for this project, and I want to make as many of them as possible, either along that horizontal plane or along the 45-degree angle plane. And that will just enhance this geometric effect that I'm trying to create in this illustration. The skull itself is going to have a lot of details where you just cannot make it 45-degree, or it would just start to look weird. The concept of a skull would start to fall apart. So make as many pieces as you can 45, but don't feel tied to it. Let's make the stroke width about 6 points maybe, and let's turn off the fill. Now, these corners that you have made in your 45-degree angle paths, you can round some of them off, and it's interesting what happens there. It still maintains that geometric nature, but it softens some of those details. I've ended this path here. Let's use our smart guide and create the eye socket. Another couple 45s. This one I don't want to make 45 because I want to come out a little bit further. It would look weird if the eye socket was completely 45. Same here on this path. Smart guide there just to line that up. Now, I'm going to round a few of these off as well. Some of them very subtly, some of them a little bit bigger than others. It creates a cool look. You can change your mind on a path so you didn't round it enough. You can click in the middle and that rounding handle will appear again, which is a neat feature. So there's an eye socket that I'm pretty pleased with. Then from there, all I'm going to do is start picking out details that I like and working from there. Let's get the vertical line for that side, not quite 45 there, and then maybe a 45 back that comes out to the outer edge of the skull. Round that off, round this off, and then I'm following a lot of the lines that are actually found in the skull, but then I'm going to start to take some creative liberties and create random geometric details. So there, that was my probably favorite feature in Illustrator, is the transform again. So I created a copy and then I hit Command D several times with the copy selected, and I created multiple copies at the same distance apart. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you've seen me use that effect multiple times. So there it is once more. Top. I'm just going to go and select these handles with my direct selection arrow, which is A on the keyboard if you want to pull that up quickly, and round off all of these sections. That'll be a subtle round. And then here I've got a line that overextends, so I'm going to use that direct selection arrow again and just bring that point back in to a good happy spot. Those all worked out nicely with 45 degree angles. Not entirely sure how I want to handle the teeth, so I'm just going to end that line there for now, and I'll come back to it when I figure that out. Things are coming together nicely. Let's start adding in some more of these random lines. The way I like this look is with everything kind of connecting. So some of these lines in the natural skull just end, and depending on the illustration style that you are working with, you might want a line that ends in a spot, but I like to finish these all off somewhere. So sometimes that means extending a line past the natural detail that you're following, but that's how I like to use a template image like this, where it's not, I'm not following it verbatim, I'm just using it to get my scale and general proportions in a good spot. And then everything else after that is kind of just eyeballed. So this is starting to come together nicely. Let's build the lower portion of the jaw. Again, if you've watched any of my other previous videos, I use a lot of key commands. It just speeds up the workflow if you were futzing around with a lot of these things, it would end up taking a lot longer. But key commands speed up your workflow and make you more effective. So hopefully you can pick up a couple out of this and use them yourself. So there I deselected my path. Once I was done with it and the path was active, it wants to, or Illustrator by nature wants you to complete the path. It wants you to come all the way back around and complete it, and then it lets go of it for you. But in this case, if you've got the path active and you want to let go of it, Command-Shift-A will deselect it, and now you can use just your regular selection arrow with A, or direct selection arrow, and do your rounding details there, and you can come back to finish that off when you get to the point where you are reflecting everything across that center guide we created. So lower portion of the jaw is starting to come together. Again, I'm not entirely sure how I want to handle the teeth, so I'll probably just leave that there like that for now, and then I'll come back to it. Let's add in some of these details here. I think maybe I'll speed up through the next section as I work, because all of the techniques are going to end up being the same. You're just going to hear the same key commands over and over, and that will probably get tedious. So I'll speed this up and make it look like I am a super fast illustrator.
Perfect.
Okay, so there's the first half of the skull in a spot where I'm feeling pretty good with it. What you can do now is you can turn off your template for the time being, and then you can select all, Command A, and press O on your keyboard for the reflect tool. And then you can come to one of these points that you lined up in the middle, and holding down Option, you click on the anchor point, and then you want to be on vertical because you want to reflect across a vertical line. And then you hit copy. Now that copies everything that you had selected, and it gives you that perfect symmetry that we were going for. Now you can see here these paths aren't connected, they aren't joined, so they're two strokes that don't perfectly line up. So what you want to do, technically the points line up if you swap into outline mode, but they're not joined. So if you use your direct selection arrow, click and drag to create a box, you can grab a section like this. So it's 2 points, 2 different paths, and you could hit Command J on your keyboard to join them. Now when you go back to outline mode, oh, we've got something that didn't line up perfectly, so it created that extra point. So if you minus one of them, there we go. So that was back to your pen tool, and you could minus that point because it was doubled up and it created that weird cap on the end there. Now that detail will probably round out because that's what we were doing with the teeth. And we have the same problem up here at a couple points. Anywhere the paths came straight into the middle, you won't notice this effect, but it's if you had any paths that were not straight lines. So again, direct selection arrow, pick up the 2 points, Command J, and then you could probably delete one if you get that weird cap effect. J, pen tool, minus, good to go. I can pick both of these up again and round them out a bit. Do we have any more of those? No, it looks like we're good. Nice. So at this point you can finish up, or you can add in a few more details. If you're working on one side, just be aware of what paths you've added in so that you can pick them up, reflect them across a center point so that they end up on the opposite side. The other thing that I like to do with these monoline illustrations, and I've done this a fair bit now, let's select all of this, and we're going to create a copy off to the side just so we don't lose our work. And then we're going to take this version and we're going to go Object, Path, Outline Stroke, which creates outlines out of all of our strokes. And we're going to use our Pathfinder palette and we're going to unite everything together. And it creates this nice compound path. It cleans up all those lines that were overlapping. And now the neat thing that I've done, again, probably in previous videos you may have seen, is I'll take this compound path and I'll go Object, Compound Path, Release. Then I will pick up just the large outer section with the direct selection arrow and I'll hit delete twice. And then I'm left with the filled areas instead of the outlined areas. And I think that this creates a really cool effect. There were a few of these dot shapes that haven't translated properly. So what happens there is you need to ungroup everything, pick up the shapes that should have the circles knocked out of them and send them to back with Command Shift left square bracket. And then you can pick up all of the dots and the shape and use a subtract feature to remove those dots from the shape that they're supposed to be knocked out of. So we can do that again here. We can drop into outline mode, holding Shift with the select arrow. We can pick up all 3 of those shapes, bring them to front, Command Shift square bracket right. Then pick up this one with holding down Shift and we can subtract it. And there you go. That looks cool. So let's repeat that process on these over here. Pick them up. Make sure that the dots are in front and you're subtracting the dots from the big shape in the back. So send to forward, send to back are important tools here. Otherwise the subtraction feature will not work properly. So say you're in outline mode like this, you've grabbed these 3 shapes and you also grab this big shape here. If the 3 dots are not on top, oh, they were on top. I'll just show you here. So I'll drop this in behind. No, bring it to the front. That's what I meant. Then in outline mode, you're able to select something that's in behind. And now if you subtract it, you'll get this warning that the filter produced no results. Please select 2 intersecting paths. And that's because the large shape, if you subtract it from the circles, would just leave you nothing. You need to subtract the circles from the larger shape. So that means that the larger shape needs to be underneath so that the circles are subtracted from it when you use the Pathfinder. Just a handy trick you need to keep in mind, the layer order when you're using the Pathfinder. So that's cool. I might want to knock out these shapes. Yeah, I think that better defines the skull. Maybe I knock out the eyeballs. Yeah, that's not bad. What's it look like with the nose knocked out? That's pretty good too. So there you have it. I used the reference image of the skull to create this cool look. Hopefully you found it helpful and easy to follow along with. If you made it this far in the video, I'm assuming you liked it. I would really appreciate it if you do all those things that YouTubers ask you to do. It's like, comment, subscribe to the channel, you know, all those sorts of things. Really helpful. I appreciate it, and I appreciate all your support so far, and I'll see you in the next video.
Perfect.